The head of DC Studios, James Gunn, has confirmed the new Superman will have a political message. He said, Superman is the story of America, an immigrant that came from other places and populated the country. Of course, when you think of Superman, you think of the story of immigration. Douglas, it seems these studios would rather make a loss or push their political ideology than actually give audiences what they want.
I know. I mean, one of the great lessons of the box office in recent years in the US and elsewhere is that people want good movies, amazingly enough. Look at what Top Gun 2, Top Gun Maverick, managed to achieve. Basically saved the cinemas in the US when it came out because it didn't have any of this bunk and guff. Since then, Disney and other studios have really unwisely, for their own profit margin, if nothing else, decided to go down this kind of route, make everything about the same boring political, pseudo-political points. You would have thought the studios would have learned from the Snow White disaster of the last year, and they should have realized that, you know, the public don't want to hear Snow White or Superman opining about how they can be the hero they were meant to be, that they were born to be, against all the odds of the etc., the patriarchy or whatever. I suppose we should just be grateful that we've only had this bit of politics shoved down our throats so far about the new Superman film. I mean, we're kind of lucky that it's Superman at all. You would have thought by now the studios were so depleted in their ideas that we would have had ourselves force-fed an ethnically diverse female Superman, and that if you didn't just love that, then you were obviously the kind of bigot who should be arrested by as many police officers as a local force can bring up. But all this stuff is connected. It's always just this tedious, predictable, juvenile politicking being forced on us, whether on flags on the streets, whether by the police, whether by the studios and elsewhere. And just, you know, the police have a job of policing. The authorities should keep cities clean. And studios and film studios should make films that we actually want to watch. And, you know, there's a thought for free.
That is a good thought. And I think DC Studios have really missed an opportunity here. They could have gone with a non-binary Superman. In fact, call him Super They, because man is very exclusionary in itself. But give it time, they will come up with that. Before you go, Douglas, you wrote a great piece for the New York Post about Zohran Mamdani. And since that piece was published last week, well, more polling has emerged, showing that he is the clear front-runner to be the next mayor of New York City. In this poll, you can see he's leading on 41%, ahead of Cuomo on 26% and Eric Adams on 16%. You lived in New York for several years. Are New Yorkers really this suicidally stupid?
It's really worrying because you can see, as polls like that show, how Mamdani could easily sneak through and win. You know, about a fifth of New Yorkers actually engage in mayoral race voting. So there are millions of people that simply have been checked out. And if they remain checked out, then it's very likely that Mamdani would be able to win. As I said in the piece, there's all sorts of reasons to not look forward to that, not least the fact that he can't do basic math or accounting and can't read a budget sheet. And that just got exposed the other day as well, because, of course, he's promising tens of millions of dollars to things that turn out not to actually be in the gift of the city to give. But there's a lot of reasons. He is he's just one of those politicians who's come from absolutely nowhere. He tried to make it as a rapper for a bit, and then that didn't work out. So he became a political activist, which we all know is very important when you're running America's biggest city. And now we also find out that his own resume has been a fraud, and that when he applied for university at Columbia, where his daddy is a professor, so you would have thought he'd have been a shoo-in, he applied to Columbia, didn't get in, but he also said that he was African American, which is interesting because he only moved to America, became a citizen, I think, 8 years ago or so. He isn't an African American by any means. But isn't it interesting, once again, just as it's the middle-aged German fraus who are the ones who are viciously attacking young ethnic migrants in Germany and so on. Isn't it interesting the way these things can be turned around? I bet you that if a Republican had been found to have claimed falsely that they were an African American only a few years ago, not decades and decades ago, but only a few years ago, I think that person would have no future in electoral politics. But oh, it's Mamdani and vibes and so on. So it's all forgiven. The same way that Pocahontas, Elizabeth Warren, she holds herself out as a native Indian all her life and gets all the advantages that got her, and then says, oh, whoops, no, I turn out not to have any Native American blood at all, but so what? Again, total double standards. This is the stuff that enrages people. Mamdani was basically doing college application blackface only a few years ago, and that will be accepted as everything else about him will be accepted. All of the bigotries that he's expressed throughout his short public life so far, all of the absolute pie-in-the-sky promises, unfunded promises he's telling young New Yorkers he can give them, all of this will be forgiven because he's running as a Democrat, progressive, of course, and of course actually a socialist Democrat, a democratic socialist. And it's so pathetic that people would fall for this. I really hope that the 4 million or so adults in New York who've not engaged in this race start to engage in it, because there is no reason why New York should have to have a democratic socialist running it, whose own CV is lamentable and whose governance of the city would put yet another stress test on a city that badly needs to be brought back and not to chase successful people out.
Well, if he does win, it's going to be a godsend for real estate agents in Florida and Texas and Tennessee, because the New Yorkers would be fleeing to those red states. Douglas Murray, thank you so much for your time tonight.
A great pleasure as always, Rita. Thank you.